Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Fiber Strike 95, and welcome back to our Friday game day stream. And I hope you all have a great Christmas, by the way. I hope you all had a great Christmas on yesterday and enjoy your time on Christmas. So today we're here to do one of our new game day flights. Today we're in Alberta, Canada today. We're going to cover one of the NHL's most important regional rivalries, the Battle of Alberta. A major rivalry between the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers, two of the most successful Canadian teams in the NHL, of course. Of course, this is a relatively more recent rivalry dating back to 1980, but despite that, though, this has historically been an intense rivalry, especially during its peak in the 1980s, especially. And these teams have both had some legendary players throughout that era, from Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, and many more iconic Calgary Flames stars, and Lanny McDonald, too. So, lots of really cool stuff. Before we get started, I do want to say hello in chat. Super Typhon, good to see you. He says in chat, my old hometown team. That's right, the Oilers. I remember you used to be from around the Edmonton area. So, we're going to be talking about the Oilers, of course. Really cool franchise for sure. So here's our flight plan for this morning, of course, for this afternoon stream. For this morning stream, of course. We have that afternoon stuff. So we're going to start here at Charlie Echo November 4, High River Airport, just outside of Calgary. From there, we'll go into downtown Calgary. We'll fly around downtown Calgary. We get to check out the Saddle Dome, Scotiabank Saddle Dome. And then we'll make our way up through Prince Islands Park into downtown. Then we'll briefly also visit McMahon Stadium, home of the Calgary Stampeders. Because there's also another very bitter Battle of Alberta rivalry, the one with the Stampeders versus Elks, formerly known as the Eskimos. By the way. Then from there, we'll head up north and make our way to our first stop at Red Deer Regional Airport at Red Deer, halfway between Edmonton and Calgary and Edmonton. Then from there, we'll fly over to Edmonton. We'll get to downtown Edmonton. We'll be visiting the University of Alberta. We'll be checking out University of Alberta. Then we'll fly across the thing. We'll get to Rogers Place, home of the Oilers. Then we'll go to Commonwealth Stadium to visit the Elks. And then we'll head up northwest and make our last stop at Edmonton Villeneuve, Rose Field, Charlie Romeo Foxtrot 3. We'll visit there. So that will be our stream, just 2 legs today. So that's where we're going to be. Oh, that's fantastic news. Yes, you just got a new game PC. That's awesome, Typhon. I'm so happy for you. Get to finally be in the sim. I know you've been everywhere in the chats. To have you flying around Inner Sim, I'm very happy for you. I just also got the parts for my new PC. Once I get the graphics card, I'm gonna get worked on this Sunday. So I'm finally gonna get me a new gaming PC. I needed a more powerful system. But yeah, I can't wait to see you in the air, Typhon. It's been long overdue. So today we'll take the Piper PA-20 Warrior today. I thought, since we only got 2 legs and it's a bit of a shorter distance flight, take something a little slower. So I took the Piper Warrior. I thought this would be a fine aircraft for this afternoon stream. It would be a great time. A beautiful little aircraft. I thought this would be a fantastic plane to take. So I did also receive a few other gifts too for Christmas. I did give me 2 tickets for Louisville City Football Club. Now I'm gonna watch. So I'm gonna watch Louisville City Football Club, which I'm very excited to see. Lou City. I got 2 tickets for it. So for 2 games. So I'm gonna have to talk to my dad, see which 2 games we're gonna pick. But looking forward to that, of course. So we're gonna get ready for the flight. Clear all the stubs off. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and prepare for our leg. Oh, Radeon 5700 XT, not the biggest, but yeah, that's similar to what I got. I have an Asus GeForce RTX 5700 Ti, which is what my brother picked out. So it's not that dissimilar. It's not that too much dissimilar to yours. So should be a relatively easy thing to run, of course. So for the altitude for this stream, of course, will be thankfully our altitude doesn't have to be super high. Our altitude for the first leg of the trip will fly around 4,500 feet. You don't need to fly too high. 5,000 feet technically is the safe altitude. We'll go 4,500 feet. Add 4,500 feet. Lower the volume for this for a bit. And we're going. So, very excited to finally get a new sim and continue to run with the head. Turn left. Yep. Going to we're going to go ahead and get this 3,500 feet. So as we get this set up here, we're going to go ahead and talk about the matchup here, the Battle of Alberta, Oilers versus Flames. This iconic rivalry for Alberta has been dated back to 1980. This is one of the fiercest regional rivalries in league history. Of course, this is a relatively newer rivalry dating back to October 22nd, 1980. And these two teams, geography plays a heavy role as these two teams are both on opposite sides of Alberta. Being that Edmonton, the provincial capital, and Calgary, the most populous city. Both teams have met in the postseason 6 times during all this, and both have combined for 6 Stanley Cup titles, 1 for the Flames and 5 for the Edmonton Oilers. This is a very historic matchup between 2 of the biggest teams in the city. One very big thing about the Oilers and all that, the regular season record has been ruled by the Calgary Flames 132 to 110, 18 and 7. Though, as of now, for the all-time series, while the Orioles lead in postseason matchups 23-12. And when you put all the results together, the rivalry is led by the Calgary Flames. Very big important rivalry, of course, here in Canada's Alberta, of course. So, of course, the origins of this rivalry you see, the Oilers weren't originally part of the NHL, but rather the WHA, the World Hockey Association, back in 1972, and they joined the NHL as part of that merger in 1979. Then, soon after, of course, you had the Flames, and they moved from Atlanta. They were originally the Atlanta Flames, but they moved out of Atlanta in 1970, 1980, due to Atlanta struggling with fans, of course. Their relocation was due to poor performance and, of course, the stagnation of the fan base. So they moved from Atlanta to Calgary. And there's a question which team is going to be the top team in the province. Of course, the Flames were the higher ranked squad in their inaugural season, finishing with 39 wins at 92 points, and made it to the Stanley Cup semifinals. However, the next year and probably for the next decade or so, the Oilers were the dominant team. And it was thanks to the fact Wayne Gretzky came to be, and he shattered over 100 records during his time in the NHL. But of course, the true peak of this rivalry was the 1980s. This was especially bitter if you're talking about the second half of that decade, because you see, the Flames and Oilers were the two best teams in the Campbell Conference, which is now the Western Conference, and by some accounts, the best teams in the entire league. Of course, as one of the two teams representing the Campbell Cup Conference in the semifinal for 8 straight years, was from 1983 to 1990, was the Flames and Oilers. Yes, they represented it, and Alberta teams won 6 of those 8 Stanley Cup titles, 5 of those being the Oilers. In fact, one of the Oilers of that era were considered to be one of the NFL's last great dynasties in the NHL, and produced multiple Hall of Fame legends. Of course, Wayne Gretzky himself, but you also had Glenn Anderson, Paul Coffey, Grant Furr, Kevin Lowe, Jar Curry, and Mark Messier. Of course, guided by fellow Hall of Fame head coach Glenn Sather. 84-85 Oilers were considered by many to be the greatest team of all time. It was during all of it. Of course, the Flames did win their only Stanley Cup in 1989, and they had stars as well. Lanny McDonald, Doug Gilmour, Al MacInnes, Joe Mullen, and Joe Nieuwendyk. Of course, the period of repeated confirmations meant that the Oilers and Flames were going to meet each other for the playoffs. As a result, Oilers and Flames faced off each other plenty of times in the playoffs. Of course, the Oilers defeated the Flames in those playoff meetings in 1983, 1984, 1988, and 1991 on their way to 2 of the 5 Stanley Cups. However, the Flames did beat the Oilers in the 1986 postseason, of course. And those playoff games were especially bitter. However, the rivalry did go on a bit of a decline. After the opening round match in 1991, these two teams did not meet again in the playoffs until 2022. The Oilers, the 1990 Stanley Cup champions, had finished 20 points behind the 89 Stanley Cup champions, Flames. Despite this, though, the Oilers were able to push the series to 7 games, thanks to Esa Tikkanen, led the underdog Oilers to reach an overtime victory against the Flames. Of course, during the 80s as well, however, with the changes in the regular season schedule of the 1991-92 season onwards, the two teams no longer play each other 8 times a year. Now they only fall into only 4 times a year. As a result, that meant these teams weren't going to face off against each other nearly as much. Combine that with the playoff changes as well. And the two franchises also suffered some financial hardships as they were 2 of the smallest markets in the NHL, restricting their ability to pay for higher quality talent. And that was at least until mediated with the salary cap. on June 2005. Of course, it took over a decade for any of these two teams to return back to anything near the 1980s, of course. The Flames went to the Stanley Cup final in 2004 to take on the Tampa Bay Lightning, but they fell in 7 games in that series. Of course, the next Stanley Cup in 2006, because of the NHL lockout, the Oilers made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, but again, just like the Flames, they did lose the 7 games, this time to Carolina. And the Oilers that year became the first 8 seed to advance past the semifinals, let alone even take it to the Stanley Cup. Of course, there have been 3 regular season sweeps in the rivalry: 2009 to 2010 season, the 2014-15 seasons, and the Flames took those 2 series those years, and of course the Oilers took the 2016-17 season for the rivalry core. And then during the 2020s was the revival of the new rivalry, and the large revival during the early 2020s was a huge revival of the rivalry again. During a game on January 11, 2020, Calgary's Matthew Tkachuk and Edmonton's Zach Casson became a feud, and eventually caused many fights over the years and had revived this rivalry's intensity into a full-scale brawl one day on February 1st. It was a full-scale rivalry, a brawl, and many fans consider it to be the epitome of the rivalry, and they have been waiting for this sort of battle in 3 decades. Then in 2022, they faced off against each other in the playoffs for the first time since 1991. And of course, it ended up being a very intense series, but in the end, the Oilers were able to knock out the Flames in the postseason as they took care of things in Game 5. Of course, they advanced into the Western Conference Finals, but ended up losing to the Colorado Avalanche. So, pretty important stuff, and that is a bit of the history of the Battle of Alberta, both these iconic NHL franchises. Quite a bit of regional one, for sure. Only gotten more tense in recent years. So, one of the interesting things about this NHL rivalry, of course, I'm just going to increase the elevation just slightly. But one important thing about this rivalry, of course, is definitely its bitterness, in the 80s especially. And the NHL during that time was pretty crazy. Alberta dominated the NHL during the 1980s. I mean, all the stars both these franchises had. There's no shortage of those even today. So we're going to be able to approach Calgary for a bit. Calgary is Alberta's largest city, population of 1.3 million people. Metro area is 1.48 million people, which makes it the 3rd largest city in Canada and the 5th largest metro area in the country. And Calgary is based on the confluence of the Bow and Elbow rivers in the southwest portion of Alberta. And main activity economically includes energy, financial services, television, transportation, logistics, technology, aerospace, and more. In fact, the Calgary Metro is home to the 2nd largest number of corporate head offices in the country, with 800 of them. And it's also among the most livable cities in the world. In fact, Calgary itself actually is among the 3rd most livable city in the world, and it's the most livable city in all Canada. Now, Calgary is definitely the city I really want to visit the most in the country, because I do like to visit Calgary. It's such a really cool city. It also hosted the Winter Olympic Games in 1980, becoming the first Canadian city to host the Olympic Winter Games. I mean, there's a lot to do in the city, of course. Of course, Calgary has a lot of really cool music and theater. But if I asked to ask one of you guys the most important event in the city, it's the Calgary Stampede, one of the greatest rodeos on earth. It's been held each July. Every July, it's one of the biggest festivals in Canada. Features, of course, rodeos, parades. There's a parade, stage shows, concerts, competitions, racing, First Nation exhibitions. And it's been around since 1886. So it has been very, very, very important. Of course, the Flames are the big ticket in town, obviously. So yes, it's completely snowing in Alberta right now. Completely covered in snow. So a bit about sports things I do want to cover. Of course, we know the NHL standings, of course, between the Flames and Calgary, the Flames and the Oilers this year. In terms of the standings this year, obviously for the Flames and the Oilers, of course. Um, they both play in the Pacific Division. The Oilers are doing quite decently, 44 points. That's one of the tied first in the division points with the Golden Knights and Ducks. However, the Flames this year have been one of the worst teams in the Western Conference with only 34 points, 15 wins, 18 losses, and 4 overtime losses. Not really a great year for the Flames. The Oilers are doing quite decent. It's a very competitive Pacific Division this season. No question about that. About to fly over this part of fly over this part of Alberta. So, in course of other news as well, I did have a video in my Discord to talk all about the rivalry. So, if you guys are interested, I have a Discord. Here you go, guys. So, I hope you all had a great Christmas and enjoyed your time out in there. I did give me a few tickets. It got me a T-shirt and a scarf for Louisville City. I actually have that. Cool. But for games this weekend, I think this was definitely the best choice. There wasn't really a lot of great games this weekend that I was interested in. So, none of the games looked that interesting this weekend. So I decided to pick this game, of course. I thought this would be a fun matchup. Pick this week. In terms of our sports news from the week, Espanyol, the Spanish club I support, has just won its 5th straight game at Bilbao San Mamas, 2-1 win for the Parakeets. Of course, they won't be playing this weekend, but they'll be playing next weekend against Barcelona. And by the way, speaking of Barcelona Espanyol, this is going to be the game day flight next week. By the way, I definitely confirmed that one. I was tempted to either pick the Barcelona Derby or the Old Firm between Rangers and Celtic in Scotland. But after some bit of thinking and after some bit of thinking for a bit, I just think the Barcelona Derby just made more sense, especially with Espanyol and Barcelona. Barcelona is the best team in the league this year, and Espanyol is a 5-game win streak in their best form in over 2 decades. Whereas Rangers and Celtic, on the other hand, are not doing so hot. Celtic is actually not ahead in the Scottish standings. Rangers are. It's not even, no, it's not Celtics in leading standings. It's Hearts. Hearts are actually ahead of Rangers Celtic and Rangers this year. Yeah, Rangers is 4th. Whereas Espanyol and Barcelona are both within the top 5. So that made a pretty easy choice. So this is Calgary, by the way. I do want to talk briefly about the Flames for a bit. So about the Calgary Flames, they're based in Calgary, of course. The Flames are the 3rd major ice hockey team to represent the city. The first being the Calgary Tigers from 1921 to 1927, and the Calgary Cowboys from 1975 to 1977. And they're one of 2 franchises based in Alberta. Of course, the team was actually founded much earlier. In 1972, they were founded in Atlanta as the Atlanta Flames. However, they relocated to Calgary in 1980 due to the fan attendance issues in Atlanta. Of course, they played their games at the Scotiabank Saddledome. In 1985-1986, the Flames became the first Calgary team since the 1923-24 Tigers to compete up. And in 1989, the Flames won their first and so far only Stanley Cup title. The Flames have won 2 President's Trophies as the top regular season team and 8 division titles. Of course, their all-time leader is Jerome Iginla. is their all-time leader in games played, goals, and points. Of course, Flames are definitely one of the NHL's most interesting franchises. Of course, the stadium we're going to be playing here, we're going to be visiting, is the Scotiabank Saddledome, located in Stampede Park in the southeast end of downtown Calgary. It was built back in 1983 to replace the Stampede Corral as the home of the Flames. It also hosts concerts, conferences, other sport championships, and even exhibitions for the Calgary Stampede. Of course, it went under renovations in 1994-1995. And of course, it's owned by the city of Calgary. One interesting thing to note, and one of its unique things about the dome, is, of course, its unique roof. It actually has it's shaped like a horse saddle, hence the name Saddle Dome. But you wouldn't believe this, but this is actually the third oldest arena in the league. Yes, only Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle and Madison Square Garden, New York City, are older than the Saddle Dome. And the Saddle Dome does seat around 19,000 people. It's a pretty large arena in terms of. Of course, the Flames are actually building a new arena soon to replace it. Scotia Place is going to be coming into existence starting at the 2027-2028 season. So you may not have much time to go check out Saddle Dome. Now, I have been to an NHL game. If you guys never heard of the Nashville Predators, I'm going to go ahead and reduce the power just slightly. I'm going to lower the power for a bit. Go a little slower, obviously. This is Calgary, by the way. So to our left, this is the stadium for where they do the Stampede events, the rodeo and stuff. It's hosted over here. This here is the Saddle Dome. This is the Stampede. Go ahead and get a picture of the Saddle Dome and stuff. There you go. And we'll get a picture of Calgary's a really cool city. And Calgary's among the Canadian states I really want to visit. I've heard a lot of great things about Calgary. Really cool city. So this is downtown Calgary. You got some really cool landmarks here. The Calgary Tower is right here. Landmarks here in the city. Really beautiful town. Calgary also has a really busy airport too. I've actually flown in and out of Calgary. I like Calgary as an airport. Calgary Airport's actually really nice to fly in and out of. And it's actually Canada's fourth busiest airport. It looks beautiful out there. So it looks absolutely gorgeous out here. So to our, we're going to fly over McMahon Stadium. It's going to be our next flyover. But if you guys don't know, it's not the only major rivalry in this province, by the way. The Stampeders and the Elks also had. The Stampeders and Elks are also a very bitter rivalry. Also, another very bitter rivalry. Well, Sorry about that. I had a bit of a... This is McCann Stadium, by the way, home of the St. Peter's, of course. That is the home of the St. Peter's and the University of Calgary. This is the historic home of the Calgary St. Peter's of the Canadian football. That rivalry, though, is a very bitter one. Um, and the Stampeders are one of the more successful. And of course, the Stampeders are one of the most successful teams in Canadian football, winning 8 Grey Cups. And they've been around since 1945. And are the 5th oldest active franchise in Canadian football. So very successful, and of course, their rivalry with the Elks and St. Peter's is quite a bitter one, as it features 2 of the most successful um, teams in the Canadian football. So we're going to continue on forward into our next leg, of course. So to our right, of course, is Calgary International Airport, Canada's 4th busiest airport. I like Calgary International. I like flying in and out of it. Plus, I mean, you're not far from Banff National Park to your west. This area is right around the area you can find Banff National Park. Really beautiful area here in Canada. Gorgeous scenery in Alberta. So let's go ahead and talk about some more about the Calgary Flames as we make our way over to our first stop at Red Deer Airport. We'll continue to talk more about the Calgary Flames. In terms of the community impact of the Flames and talking about the Flames in their community, the Flames have played a big role in their community, of course. One interesting thing, of course, is the Flames have maintained active presence in the community since their arrival in Calgary. The team has a nonprofit charity. The Flames Foundation has donated more than $32 million to causes throughout southern Alberta. Along with the Rotary Club, the Flames are helping fund the first children's hospice in Alberta and one of only 6 in North America. And they're also close partners with the Alberta Children's Hospital and the Gordon Townsend Schoolhouse within. And their main activities they played in a lot. Mainly with the Wheelchair Hockey Challenge, has been popular around for both players and kids involved as well. Very well known part of it as well. Of course, another tradition is the Sea of Red, which came around during the 1986 Stanley Cup Finals. And it's based on the playoffs with the Oilers. The Oilers fans were done has promoted Hashtag Fever. And of course, the Flame fans countered by wearing red. And that became the Sea of Red with a whole bunch of red Calgary Flames jerseys. Of course, then the next year when they played against Winnipeg, the Jets fans in Winnipeg responded with the Sea of Red by wearing white, which created their own iconic tradition, Winnipeg Whiteout. Of course, that's the Sea of Red tradition, and you found all over playoff games when the Flames red a whole sea. Of course, the Red Mile is also a thing too, which was during the 2004 Stanley Cup final. Calgary became basically a host of a non-stop party during the 17th Avenue Southwest Entertainment District. Saw as many as 35,000 fans packed the streets during the first 3 rounds of the playoffs and 60,000 during the finals, and received coverage in many papers across North America. As the parties remained peaceful, incidents were minimal despite the large number of people. Of course, the Calgary police didn't really like it, and the Red Mile gatherings would not be encouraged, and ultimately measures to discourage them. However, later on, the chief of police, the mayor, convinced the Calgary police to relax the ban of the Red Mile. However, there's still no tolerance for nudity or drunkenness. So, yes, there's the Red Mile Entertainment District. Yes, Springbank Airport is also their busiest GA airport. That's correct. Springbank is their busy GA airport in the region, too. Also a pretty busy GA airport. That's correct. We'll go ahead and get forward straight ahead. So our national park this week, by the way, for our Sunday stream will be Acadia National Park. Get that taken care of course. So we're going to go ahead and get Acadia National Park set up. We'll get ready for the flight in Maine. We'll take a different bush plane for that one. But we'll get our trip through Acadia. Should be a beautiful flight. That national park. Be a gorgeous trip. Of course, so we need to look at the team info and some more information about the Flames themselves and for Calgary. The Flames, by the way, wear their iconic red, yellow, and white jerseys. And they retained their original design from when they wore in Atlanta. The white jerseys with red shoulders and red and yellow stripes, and saw red jerseys with yellow and white stripes. Of course, the Flames altered their jersey design, adding black to the color scheme. They wore black to add into it, along with new striping pattern with diagonal stripes. Of course, then they changed it by adding their new new design of the Flaming Sea. But of course, they changed their uniforms back in 2020 to bring back the original design, which is based on their original jerseys. So they had to reinstate their jerseys. That became the iconic jerseys. They also had an alternate jersey back in 1980. Very iconic jersey, of course. Um, of course, the logo, the primary flaming sea, was introduced when the team came in 1980. It was designed by a Calgary graphic designer named Patricia Reddit. And the design of the logo has remained constant since it was created, though the Flames created a different color logo for home and away. It was originally red with white background, while the road logo was white on red. Then they had black accents in 1994. Of course, all that lasted until 2020, and they revert back to their traditional look. Of course, then finally with their mascot, of course, the mascot for the Calgary Flames is Harvey the Hound. He's actually the first mascot in the NHL's history. Back in 1983, to serve both the Flames and the Calgary Stampeders. Of course, Harvey the Hound had a well-known incident in January 2003 when his tongue was ripped out by Edmonton Oilers head coach Craig McTavish. He ripped out the poor hound's tongue. It made headlines across North America and much of humor, too. But Harvey the Hound is the iconic and beloved mascot of the Flames. Really beloved figure in the city, of course. So, pretty cool stuff about the Flames logo and stuff, but really cool. They also have an alternate mascot. Um, known as Blassie, the Flaming Horse, was also their alternate logo. But the Calgary Flames definitely have some really cool uniforms too. The red, yellow, and black and all that makes it pretty striking uniform. So some really cool stuff about the Flames. So one of the really cool and interesting elements, of course, about the Calgary Flames, and one of the really things about them, of course, is their players. Of course, they've had many well-known players throughout the franchise's history. Of course, as one of the Canada's most notable franchises, the Calgary Flames have had many icons of the club. If I had to pick the greatest player in club history, the first player I'm put on top of my list is is probably their all-time leader, games, goals. That's Jerome Iginla. He born and raised in Edmonton. Yes, he is from Edmonton, actually. Um, he actually, um, of course, Iginla actually then became part of the Flames, and he played for the Flames um, for played for the Flames starting in 1995, and he lasted all the way his first stint to 2013. And he played for a couple other teams, including the Penguins, Bruins, Avalanche, and Kings. But of course, he is by far most notable for his time in Calgary. And he became an absolute stud during his peak. He won the Art Ross and Maurice Richard trophies as the NHL's leading point goal scorer. But he won his trophy was the first time since 1980 that was not won by Gretzky, Lemieux, or Jagr. Pretty crazy to think about it. He was also the MVP during his crazy 2001-2 season, and he was a nominee for the Hart Memorial and King Clancy Memorial trophies. As well. He became a pretty big captain, of course. He is a time NHL All-Star, the Flames' all-time leader in goals, points, and games played. Second assist owing to Al Macinus. He scored in 50 goals in a season on 2 different occasions, and he's only one of 7 NHL players in NHL history to score 30 goals in 11 straight seasons. And one of 20 to score over 600 goals, and one of 34 to record 1,300 points in his career. Ignatius number 12 has been retired by the Flames in 2019, and he's definitely one of their all-time greatest players. Of course, he wasn't the only really great player. Of course, we got to talk about the guy who led the Flames to the 1989 Stanley Cup title, Lanny McDonald. Of course, he comes from Hanna, Alberta. Before he even played as a Flame, he was the 4th overall pick by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and played for the Maple Leafs in the Colorado Rockies, which, by the way, the Rockies were then later on the New Jersey Devils. But of course, he was a big time. But however, he truly became a legend when he joined the Calgary Flames in 1981. And the rest became history, as after that, he became one of the most valuable and important players in franchise history. He was a top scoring machine during his 16-year career. He scored over 500 goals and 1,000 points. His total of 66 goals in 1982-83 season remains the Flames' franchise record in a season. But of course, the big reason he became a legend in Calgary was due to his famous personality, and of course his iconic bushy red mustache, making him an iconic figure of the sport. As well. In fact, he was the inaugural winner of the King Clancy Memorial Trophy due to his leadership and humanitarian presence. And he became an icon of Calgary Flames fans. Truly a legend of the franchise. Big piece. Afterwards, of course, is the goalkeeper of the Flames, Mike Vernon, during that time. At 19 seasons, he drafted 56 overall by the Flames in 1981. He has won over 300 games in his career, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, both with the Flames and the Red Wings in 1997, 5-time All-Star. He had the William and James Trophy, shared it in 1996, given to the goalkeeper with defused goals. And he was even the most valuable player during the 1997 Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, he was truly a legend for the Flames, and his number 30 was retired in 2007. Truly was a big time goalie for this era. Then, of course, we have the other iconic Calgary Flame goalkeeper, Mika Kiprasov. He actually hailed from Finland. He was drafted by the Sharks, fun enough. However, he truly got his big break when he joined the Flames when he was traded from the Sharks to the Flames in 2003. And he quickly became a pivotal figure for the Flames during the 2000s. Becoming a crucial piece of the team that helped got them to the Stanley Cup final in 2004. And he became always been a very strong goalkeeper during his time with the Flames and became a Flames legend. He is both the franchise holder for both wins and shutouts in Calgary Flames history. But of course, there's a couple other really big name players for the franchise. Of course, the franchise has had plenty of other Hall of Famers and icons of the franchise. Of course, you have Thier and Fleury, one of the greatest Flames of all time. One of those, he may have only been 5'6", but he was a very physical player for his size. And he joined the Flames in 1987, and he was definitely a very physical player. Scored over 1,000 points in his career. He was a big piece of winning the Stanley Cup in 1989. He recorded 90 points 4 times and 100 points twice. However, unfortunately, he was forced out of the NHL due to his drug and alcohol addiction. However, thankfully for him, he got to overcome his addictions, and he overcame it and worked hard for charity, of course. And he became a public speaker as a result. But he's still a Calgary Flames icon and a big piece of Flames history. Then, of course, we have Al MacInnis. He spent 23 seasons in the NHL. Both for the Flames and the St. Louis Blues. He became an icon for both clubs, by the way. Both franchises. He was a first-round selection and became a 12-time All-Star. And he was an important piece of the Conn Smythe Trophy for the most valuable member of the 1989 Flames team that won the Stanley Cup. And of course, he was one of the most hardest shot in the league. And he shares record with Bobby Orr's OHL record for the most goals for a defenseman. In fact, at one point, he became only the 4th defenseman in NHL history to score 100 points in his. Of course, what forced him to retirement was an eye injury during the 2003-04 season. And he finished third all-time in defenseman in goals, assists, and points, and made 7 postseason All-Star team. Of course, his number was truly retired by the Blues. However, he's honored by the Flames. But both franchises honor Al MacInnis. Beloved member of the franchise. Of course, then we have Sergei Makarov, another member of the Hockey Hall of Fame. He played for 11. He came from Russia, of course. Sergei Makarov played for multiple franchises, including the Calgary Flames, San Jose Sharks, and the Dallas Stars. But his truly successful NHL career mainly come with the Calgary Flames, but he played for a lot of his time in Soviet Union, Moscow. And of course, we have another big-time Flame, Joel Bullen, who was a big key in all this, of course. Bullen spent 5 seasons with the Flames and recorded 388 points. Grant Furr is an interesting guy. He may have only played 1 season at Calgary, but he recorded his 400th win in a Flames uniform. And he's one of the first for black hockey players in the NHL. And there have been many more. So tons of iconic players to play for the Calgary Flames. Some big names, of course. So that concludes our slides for the Calgary Flames to talk about their franchise, of course. So we're just about 131 nautical miles from our last stop. So far, we're doing pretty good here. Yes, you can see Alberta is, like a lot of parts of Canada are kind of flat on the east side of Alberta. that. Not so much when you head further west into the Canadian Rockies. So, pretty cool stuff. Um, of course, Calgary, by the way, Calgary Airport's actually expanded significantly since then. Calgary this past year had a new record 18.4 million people, 2023. And last year was 18.89 million. I think this year we might crack the 19 million passengers in Calgary. But Calgary is definitely a really cool airport. I would have liked to see Calgary get a hub, though Vancouver's a brilliant airport too. But it's a really cool airport, really cool city. We're just flying our way over to our next stop. We're getting pretty much closer to our final stop. As you can definitely tell, this part of Canada isn't exactly. Hey, Infidel Fireman, it's been a while since I've seen you, Chad. I hope you had a great Christmas, Infidel Fireman. We're doing our game day flight this afternoon. We're doing Calgary Flames versus Edmonton Oilers. A huge matchup in the NHL. It was a huge game back in the 1980s. I thought this would be a good time to do the NHL again. I haven't done the NHL in quite some bit of time. I haven't done the NHL in quite some bit of time. Of course, there were quite a few other games I could have picked this weekend, but I just think the Oilers and Flames would be the best. I've already done the Maple Leafs, so that took the Senators and Maple Leafs Red Wings off the list. I could have done Ducks versus Kings, but I'm going to wait to do the Ducks and Kings some other time. I don't have to rush. There wasn't really some good NFL matchups. The Eagles and Bills would have been interesting, but I don't know. I just didn't feel like it. So, I hope you're all having a good weekend. Christmas too. Oh yeah, the Golden Knights. Yeah, the Golden Knights. By the way, I might do the Vegas Golden Knights at some point. But yeah, the Golden Knights are doing pretty good this year in the West. Obviously, they're tied first in the division. I think they have the goal differential. Well, yeah, they have the best goal differential. So that being said, they are not even the best team in the Western Conference because the Avalanche, Stars, and Wild all have something to say about that, of course. The Predators, my team I support, are fifth in the division, of course, 36 points. Predators aren't doing too badly. Could be worse. I guess the Knights' big rivalry is probably with San Jose. LA and San Jose. pretty cool stuff, of course. My team is the Nashville Predators, or Nashville, of course. They did make a Stanley Cup back in the 2017 season, of course. Unfortunately for the Predators, they didn't beat. It was the Pittsburgh Penguins, which was a team I watched a lot as a kid. Was the Pittsburgh Penguins, because when I was younger, I kind of watched Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. When I was younger, Crosby is still one of my favorite NHL players. I like watching Sidney Crosby. He's definitely one of the all-time greats for the. Yeah, Mario Lemieux, the all-time great legend for the Penguins. But the Predators had some pretty cool stuff too. Hit me. So we're going to go ahead and make our way to our first stop of the day pretty soon. I'll land at Red Deer. So of course, next week, by the way, is the Barcelona Derby. That's going to be our new game day flight. Barcelona Derby matchup. So Barcelona Derby is coming up on January 2nd. So I picked that one, of course. So pretty big stuff coming up, of course. So be ready for that one. January 9th is going to probably be the college football playoff. It's going to be whoever's going to be playing in the Peach Bowl. So depends on who they play in the Peach Bowl. But I'm hoping Indiana makes it because I want to see the Hoosiers make it to the college football. So some pretty big stuff going on, of course. But I'm just looking at the schedule and see what we're going to do. Pretty big stuff going on here as well. But of course, that's going to be January 9th. And that's going to be the week I'll be heading out town the week after. I'll keep an eye on what games are going to be on that schedule. So I'll probably get more on that schedule. So we'll be keeping an eye on all the schedules. In terms of the other ones, I've basically confirmed as well. I'll be doing a game day flight at the Super Bowl, obviously. That will be kind of a tradition. I'm gonna actually do it on the Sunday of the Super Bowl Sunday, February 8th. So I may have to cancel the National Park Series for that one. But it's the Super Bowl. It's the biggest sporting event in the country. In terms of American sport event, it's by far the biggest. I would be. So, so I'm just looking for interesting games, of course, from around the world, and I'll keep an eye on all of them. Um, just looking for some interesting new stuff. I'll just. So in terms of other major news, of course, for the other sports, of course, so in terms of Louisville for the college football playoff, since it happened a week back, since it debuted this past Saturday, of course, um, James Madison got destroyed by Oregon. That wasn't really a surprise. Ole Miss destroyed Tulane, so the G5 teams are already out of the playoff. Of course, Texas A&M and Oklahoma both lost their games, so should be interesting for this upcoming week's college football playoff stuff. But the big game this week I'm most interested in terms of the playoff schedule, I think Alabama, Indiana, and Ole Miss, Georgia are going to be the two big ones. Unfortunately, the problem is we couldn't do a game day thing this week because it would have actually been a really good thing to do. Especially the Sugar Bowl would have been interesting, flying from Athens, Georgia to New Orleans. We'll have to fly from Athens, get to Oxford, and head down to New Orleans. But that's just the thing, how things worked out. So that's the only sad thing, we couldn't do the game day flights that week. And of course, the college football playoff championship, which was something we were actually going to be planning on doing, by the way, which was on Monday, but I would have done it anyway for the weekend, was the playoff championship. We couldn't do it for the weekend, sadly. So I'll be missing on the championship for college football. And normally it would have been a Friday stream. It would have normally not been counting, but it would have been by far the biggest game on that calendar. Even if it wasn't on a weekend. So, not be mean, that's what I would have probably been saying that too. So, that was just my thoughts about the game day stuff. Of course, the league I'm going to be excited to check out this week, of course, is Brazil. The Brazil League's happening this starting January 28th, so I'll see what kind of games are out there. So we're getting ready for the next leg, of course. Just stretching, of course. So in terms of other content creators this weekend, of course, Murphy's going to be back later today. He'll be doing one of his other major streams, of course. First, done a lot of streaming stuff, but he's going to do another big stream today. He'll be going to New Zealand. He'll go from Wanaka to Christchurch. Is going to be his other adventure in the Accusum Aerostar. So really cool stuff from Murphy. And of course, Sunday, by the way, is going to be Allison Johnson. She'll be doing another one of her historical flights. She'll be doing one of her historical flights. She'll be doing for Charleston. She'll make her way up all the way to Norfolk. Including through Kitty Hawk as well, so she'll be doing another one of those flights. Let's give her a shout out. Still doing all this in a helicopter. So, should be a really interesting flying for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and not want to blow out everyone's ears. I'm gonna go ahead and one's ears out. Thank you for the shout, Typhon. We're gonna land here. Right ahead. This is Red Deer Regional. So I picked this as my first stop. It's halfway between Calgary and Edmonton. So, we're gonna go ahead and make our landing this morning. Here we go, guys. We made our landing. Hello. So we finally made our landing for our first stop of the day at Red Deer Regional. So that's where we're going here this morning. That's where we're going to stop here for a little bit. We'll see if anyone else wants to join on in. We're in the Southeast Asia server. And here's our route. So like I said, we'll get back up in just a little bit. Our way down to our second stop. got quite a bit of stuff going on here for sure. So So we're going to go ahead and get ready for the next leg. I'll be heading out pretty soon. So, so we're going to go ahead and make our way. And we're going to go ahead and head our way over to our next stop. We're going to hold up our altitude around 3,300 feet. We're going to fly over to our next stop here in Edmonton. Got one last leg left to go. Hope you guys enjoy this next flight. So, we're going to go ahead and talk a little about the Edmonton Oilers for a bit. Head our way over to Edmonton, of course. This iconic club here in Edmonton is actually much more successful than two Alberta clubs. They've been around since 1972 by WB Wild Bill Hunter, founded the Western Hockey League, and Chuck Allard. They played their first season in 1972-1973. They play their games currently at the relatively new state arena, the Rogers Place, since 2016. And they played their first season in 1972 and became one of the 12 founding franchises of the World Hockey Association. Of course, after joining the NHL, they became one of the league's most successful franchises. They've won the Stanley Cup on 5 occasions, and of course, it's during the peak years of 1983 to 1990. Along with the Pittsburgh Penguins, they are tied with the most championships won by any team since the NHL WHA merger. As well as most won by any team that joined the league after 1907. Only the Canadiens have won the Stanley Cup more times since the league's 1967 expansion. And they've won 6 straight division titles. Well, of course, they still haven't won a division title since 1987, which also includes their most recent Stanley Cup wins, the longest division drought of any North American team in North American sports. So the Oilers definitely have an interesting and proud history. Of course, their colors are royal blue, orange, and white. Are the proud team colors of the Edmonton Oilers. Now, of course, they play at one of the relatively newest arenas in the NHL, Rogers Place. I don't. We may not know about. It may have not been around since the arena got built, but this new arena is Edmonton's most recent arena, dating back to 2016. It seats up to 18,000 for ice hockey and 20,000 as a concert, and replaced the Northlands Coliseum, which was opened back in 1974. The arena is between blocks between 102 and 104th Street and 104 and 105 Avenues. This arena, of course, is a big time area for concerts in Edmonton. It was also chosen to be one of the two hubs for the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs during the COVID pandemic, of course. It hosted the Western Conference playoffs, Eastern and Western Conference finals, and the Stanley Cup final was held in the arena. It also hosted games of the third, fourth, sixth games of the Stanley Cup final. And in 2025, the first professional women's hockey league game in Edmonton was played between the Toronto Scepters and the Ottawa Charger holds here. And it also recently hosted the 2025 Stanley Cup final, the first, second, and fifth games of the final. So this arena definitely is a very modern and very high-tech arena for sure. Beautiful, beautiful arena though. Great place to watch a game, of course, in Edmonton. Of course, their team information, of course, the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers, the logo, which is what the one they used, was designed by James Harvey, a graphic designer working for an Alberta Public Relations called Francis William Johnson Payne Limited. The design now featured the traditional colors of blue and orange, but reversed from their more familiar appearances in later season, with orange being the dominant color and blue used for trimming. Of course, for the first few games, the players' names were not displayed on the uniform, but written Alberta as well. Of course, then in 74, they changed the jersey to a blue base with orange trim, and it became the famous uniform as well. And this essential design was unchanged from 1979 to 1986 when they added the team colors to midnight blue and copper with red trim. Of course, in 2001, they introduced their first alternate third sweater. It was designed by then minority owner Todd McFarland. And it was very different from every other Edmonton Oilers uniforms, using a brand new oil drop, of course. Of course, when they changed their current jerseys in the 1980s was when they fully changed their jersey. In 2015, when they became very popular with fans. Of course, they officially changed back to their original uniforms back in 2017. They changed the Oilers uniforms. But their logo is definitely an iconic look. In terms of mascot, they do have a mascot. It's actually a Canadian Lynx named Hunter, and he became the new mascot of them since 2016. So he is actually Edmonton's mascot. They chose the Canadian Lynx because their large place of habitat is actually in the province of Alberta. Of course, outside the rivalry with the Flames, their other pretty bitter rivalry was the Kings, actually, of Los Angeles, due to the fact of many playoff duels, and of course, with the whole Wayne Gretzky and Marty McSorley trade to Los Angeles. But those are definitely some of the very bitter rivalries of the Edmonton Oilers. Years. So that's a little bit of the information about the Edmonton Oilers. That's what we're going to talk about, some of the information about the Oilers, of course. So we're going to continue on this way for another. We're going to continue on this way. We're 81 nautical miles away from our final destination here. We're going to continue moving forward. So here's what it looks like from outside. Of course, we're flying really low, but to be fair, there's not a lot of scenery and there's not a lot of elevations. We fly pretty low to the ground. In fact, we're only going to lose more elevation as we head further north, away from the ridges of the of the Canadian Rockies. We're going to go ahead and talk about, of course, about some of the Edmonton Oilers. Here's some more Edmonton Oilers information, of course. So one of the interesting things, of course, about Edmonton, obviously, they were part of the WHA, and they were the ones who founded as one of the 12 founding franchises of the World Hockey on WHA. Of course, some of the other teams that were in that World Hockey Association include the Chicago Cougars, the Cincinnati Stingers, actually. Of course, several teams in Calgary, the Calgary Broncos, which later became the Cleveland Crusaders, and the Minnesota Fighting Saints are part of it, but they were folded. The Denver Spurs, and they moved to become the Ottawa Civics. The Dayton Arrows never got a chance to play, but they became the Houston Aeros. Indianapolis used to have an ice hockey team, the Racers. They were folded in 1978. LA had the Aces. The LA Sharks. Then they moved over to Michigan to become the Stags, and then finally ended it with the Baltimore Blades. Then then there was the Minnesota Fighting Saints that eventually became the New England Whalers, and they actually joined the NHL along with the Oilers. Joined the NHL as the Hartford Whalers, which now later became the Carolina Hurricanes. Then we had the New York Raiders Golden Blades. They jumped over to New Jersey and then moved to San Diego. Then Birmingham also had part of it too. And of course, there was a team Vancouver, Calgary as well. Phoenix had the Roadrunners. San Francisco Sharks never got a chance to play, but they moved to Quebec to become the Nordiques, and they also joined the NHL and the Winnipeg Jets. So of those teams, the teams that moved to the NHL would be the Oilers, the Whalers, the Nordiques, and Jets are the WHA teams that moved into the NHL during the merger. So pretty interesting stuff going on with the NHL, of course. history. So that being well. So we're gonna go ahead and gonna change west. We're gonna head up to our next destination, of course. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about our last slide for today. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about some of the Edmonton Oilers' most iconic players, of course. Of course, when we talk about the Oilers, if you're not an ice hockey fan, there's only one person that we have to put on the Edmonton Oilers list. If you're a ice hockey fan and have never heard of Wayne Gretzky, you probably live under the biggest rock known to mankind. If you guys don't know who Wayne Gretzky is, he's simply called the Great One. Wayne Gretzky, born from Brantford, Ontario. Of course, he then became part of the Canadiens during his time in the World Hockey Association. And then he became an extremely successful player for the WHA. He actually played for the Indianapolis Racers during his time. But then he became a member of the Oilers. And as a result, became a very successful player for the Oilers. And he became part of history because in his first NHL season with the Oilers, he won the Hart Memorial Trophy. The first of a record 8 in a row. And Gretzky became one of the most dominant players ever. He was the youngest player to score 50 goals in a season. Which is still a record even to this day. Of course, he won the Art Ross Trophy, the first of 7 Art Ross trophies, with a then record 164 points. Absolutely shattering Bobby Orr's record for assists in points in a season, and FCO's points in a season. He won an Art Hart Trophy. And then, of course, in 1981, the next season, broke Maurice Richard's goal record, 50 goals in 50 games. And he achieved it in just 39 games to do that. Gretzky was absolutely just broken. His 81-82 season, 92 goals, 120 assists, and 212 points, becoming the only player to break the 200-point mark in a season. Wayne Gretzky was dominant, and he was absolutely ridiculous. He broke his own assist records, and he's also continued to score a record amount of goals during Edmonton. Absolutely insane. Along with future Hall of Famers Mark Messier, Glenn Anderson, John Curry, Paul Coffey, Grant Furr. He helped won all 5 of the team's Stanley Cup titles, of course. All but one of the Stanley Cups, of course. He won 4 of them for the Oilers. However, unfortunately, if you guys know about his career, due to the bankruptcy of the Edmonton Oilers ownership, he was shipped to the LA Kings, and that trade was very controversial for a lot of Oilers fans. I don't even blame them. But seriously, you want to know how dominant he was in Edmonton and his legacy? Let me tell you how many records the guy broke. The dude, no joke, has broken an insane amount of records during his career. During his career, Gretzky has had 894 goals, 1963 assists. He's had 2,857 total points in 1,400 games. His 1,963 assists are still an NHL career record. His 285 career points lead every player. To put this in perspective, he's almost 1,000 points more than the next closest player, Jaromir Jagr. And he's considered to be the greatest hockey player of all time. He's the GOAT, the greatest player ever. In fact, the crazy thing is, his gold record is no longer the main record for goals. And the dude has broke a crap. In fact, he has 61 NHL records, by the way, upon his retirement. Shared 61 records. And here's the crazy thing. As of the end of the 24-25 season, Wayne Gretzky still holds or shares 55 of these records, which is actually insane to think about. He still hosts many records. Still here, many of them unbroken, never be challenged. In fact, this past season, it took Alexander Ovechkin to break his goal record for the most goals in a regular season. It's actually insane about Wayne Gretzky's achievements. Yeah, the voter man views the Canadians, as you know. Yeah, understandable, but absolutely, he is the GOAT. He's the greatest ever. He's part of the Order of Canada and all that too. Yes, he was also part of the Donald Trump Victory Party too. So, but of course, I'm not getting into the politics. The next great player on this list is a more recent star, but a guy who's probably the greatest Oiler since Wayne Gretzky left. Connor McDavid. Um, he became first overall pick of the Oilers in 2015, and he's one of the best players in the NHL. If not probably the best player in the league so far. Absolute beast of a player. Um, of course, became part of his junior hockey career, but he truly became the player he is today during his time in Edmonton. He became team captain, of course. He had many team disappointments, but it was nothing against Connor McDavid. He was absolutely a beast of a player. But I mean, Connor McDavid became the youngest captain in NHL history as a 19-year-old. He got 100 points in his 2016-2017 at age 20, become the second youngest player to win the Art Ross Trophy for the leading scorer. And of course, Connor McDavid has been one of the absolute elite goal scorers. And he's led the Oilers to the last two Stanley Cup finals. Of course, he's come close twice. Now he didn't get a chance. Maybe one of these days he finally gets a Stanley Cup. But I mean, the dude's a four-time first-team All-Star, five-time recipient of the Art Ross Trophy, four-time winner of the Ted Lindsay Trophy, which is the most outstanding player in the regular season. And he was the Maurice Richard Trophy winner in 2022 as the league's leading goal scorer. In many people, he's only one of two players, along with Wayne Gretzky, to win the Hart Memorial Trophy unanimously. Absolute beast. I mean, as of right now, he's scored over 361 goals, 721 assists. And here's the crazy thing: I can actually see him break one of Gretzky's records. Not his NHL record, but he'll break his Edmonton record of 1,147 points. I can actually see Connor McDavid breaking that record. I think he'll get the. I think he could very well break the games played record, and I can definitely see him get the most assists record. Whether he gets the most goals is to be seen, but I think Connor McDavid could be one of the greats in Edmonton Oiler history. And I definitely say he's the second best player in Edmonton history. Then, of course, we have Mark Messier. Really great player. He became the partner to Wayne Gretzky during the 80s. Absolute beast of a player. He is one of the greatest players ever. Is second all time in playoff points and third regular season played games in the regular season as well. A six-time Stanley Cup champion. He won 5 with the Oilers, and he won 1 with the Rangers, of course, during their iconic run in 1994. And he's the only player to captain 2 teams to Stanley Cup championship. of course, he is one of the greatest players in Oilers history. He won a Conn Smythe Trophy during the playoffs. He won twice the Hart Memorial Trophy in 1990-1992. And he was an NHL All-Star for the NHL All-Star game 16 times. Mark Messier, absolutely one of the greatest ever played the game. He's pretty much known for his incredible abilities. Of course, he's especially beloved in New York because he ended the Rangers' 54-year Stanley Cup drought. Absolute legend for the Oilers. Of course, then you also have Jari Kurri, the main right wing that ended up being a big key of their 5 Stanley Cups. Jari Kurri from Finland. He also played for the Los Angeles Kings, New York Rangers, Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, and the Avalanche. But Kurri was especially a big deal during his time in Edmonton. He was a big piece of the team. In fact, he was the first Finnish player to be in the Ice Hockey Hall of Fame. Definitely he has had a huge legacy among Finnish legends. Of course, being a major inspiration for Teemu Selanne as well. And he was once the highest ranked non-Canadian in points and goals. So, absolute beast of a player, and he's definitely a Finnish legend. And of course, Paul Coffey is another major huge name. Great defenseman during his time in Edmonton. Of course, Paul Coffey. In fact, he's the second all-time among NFL defensemen in goals, assists, and points, only behind Ray Baroque. He still hosts the record for the most goals by a defenseman in 1 year. 48 goals for a defenseman is pretty insane because defensemen don't usually score goals, but Paul Coffey's a rare exception because he did it twice. He scored more than 40 goals twice. Still the only defenseman to do that. And he's also one of only 2 defensemen to do it, score 100 points more than once. He did that 5 times as a defenseman. And he holds or shares 33 different records, too. Paul Coffey, one of the greatest defensemen ever. Then you have Glenn Anderson, other major right wing. He's been more recent. Then, of course, you have Grant Furr, one of the most successful black players in the NHL. Had a huge legacy during his time in the NHL. And he was a big piece of all the Oilers' Stanley Cup success. Al Hamilton, and of course, many, many more legendary Edmonton Oilers legends. So there you go. So there is that too. And that covers our last slide of the day. So I have the page for all his career achievements, to say the least, about Wayne Gretzky. So that covers every bit of the slides here for the Oilers and stuff. So that covers everything, of course. So with that covered, of course, I'm going to talk about each of the teams' websites, of course. So let's cover a bit about the team's website, of course, as we get our way closer to Edmonton, obviously. So this is the Oilers website, of course. Of course, it's going on tomorrow night would be the Oilers and Flames tomorrow night. Of course, December 23rd was the most recent matchup of the rivalry, the last game between the two. Of course, the game is going to be the Oilers and Flames. So I technically could have flown from the north from Edmonton over to Calgary, but I decided to do the other way around. Oh well. But last game, the Edmonton Oilers beat the Flames 5-1 as Leon Draisaitl records a hat trick. McDavid put 5 assists in that game. And yeah, poor old Flames fans, that was not a game they wanted to watch. Flames definitely were more than of course, there's a lot of Edmonton Oilers stuff. Of course, you can get shirts and polos, obviously. Get really cool stuff, of course. Get all sorts of VU and stuff. Pretty neat stuff about the Oilers. They also got the websites for the Calgary Flames. So if we look at the Calgary Flames website, this here's the Flame, of course. You can see the Flames and stuff, of course. So here's the link to their new stadium arena that's going to be built. Scotia Place is going to be their brand new arena that's going to be built for the 2027-2028 season. Brand new area. And to be fair, the Saddledome is getting outdated, of course. All that too. So yeah, you can see all the Flames jerseys, of course, the iconic red, white, yellow jerseys of the Kings, Flames. That's definitely some really cool stuff. Of course, there's a vintage jersey. You got the vintage Jerome Ignala jersey for Jerome Ignala. Old retro jersey, of course. Yeah, some pretty cool stuff. And then here's the Edmonton Oilers stuff. Of course, very popular jersey, of course, to get Connor McDavid, obviously. That's the big one a lot of people like to get. Big old Connor McDavid. But of course, you can also find a very popular jersey a lot of people like to grab their hands on. Apparently, you can get a Wayne Gretzky jersey. If you have a code, you can get it for $168. Get a Wayne Gretzky jersey for Gretzky. Of course, that's most popular because people want to get Wayne Gretzky. He's the GOAT, the greatest of all time. He's the Michael Jordan of the NHL. Dominant. So that covers a bit about the links, of course. So we're about to approach into to Edmonton. Um, of course, Edmonton, by the way, is actually the provincial capital of Alberta. It's the is the provincial capital of Alberta. It's also the fifth largest city in the country with 1.01 million people. Metro is 1.41 million people, making it the fifth largest city and sixth largest metro area in Canada. It's also the most northernmost city in metro area of North America to have a population over 1 million people. It was first inhabited by native peoples of the First Nations. And of course, it was also a historic site for the Metis people. Of course, Fort Edmonton became a trade center in 1821. Founded in 1795, the town itself was incorporated in 1892. Of course, it was actually named after Edmonton, a town in North London. But Edmonton is very well known for being the gateway to the north outside of Ontario. It's kind of a large staging point for oil sands projects in northern Alberta and large-scale diamond mining operations in the Northwest Territories. The cultural, government, and educational center that hosts festivals year-round, reflected in its nickname, Canada's Festival City. Also home to the Canada's largest mall, the West Edmonton Mall, and Fort Edmonton Park, Canada's largest living history museum. So yeah, big major city, lots of really cool arts and festivals. Some of the big major festivals here include the Works Art Design Festival, Edmonton International Street Performers Festival, the biggest one of its kind in North America, and the main summer festival, Gaydays. Founded in 1879, it was mainly adopted for the Gold Rush themes. And of course, it is a major exhibition here in this part of Canada. Gaydays basically mainly do a lot of exhibition stuff. And of course, there's definitely a lot of really cool stuff here too. Definitely lots of stuff here at Edmonton to pick. Of course, to our left here, we have the Edmonton International Airport. That's your main gateway into the city, of course. So, of course, Fort Edmonton Park, established back in 1974, it's the largest living history museum in Canada. It features both original and historical structures representing the history of Edmonton, including that of the Indigenous peoples. It's a big, huge museum. It takes you back to a time of Edmonton prior to its founding, of course. But it features some really cool stuff worth visiting, and definitely something you would definitely want to check out. Edmonton, they got a huge shopping mall in West Edmonton. It's actually the largest shopping mall in Canada. And it's the second largest mall in North America behind the Mall of America in Minnesota. Featured more than 800 stores and 9 different attractions, 2 hotels, and 100 dining venues. It also features the world's fourth largest indoor water park. It even features its own scaled down ice rink. So lots of really cool stuff here. Some pretty cool stuff too. The mall definitely is pretty interesting. Some pretty cool stuff about Edmonton. Hey, Red Baron, good to see you. Edmonton used to have a city center airport, which was closed in 2013. Ah, I didn't know about that. Stefan? Hey, Red Baron, good to see you. We're in Alberta so far. We're here in Alberta. We're talking about the Edmonton Oilers versus the Calgary Flames. We're about 25 nautical miles to our last place. We're doing it for our sports matchup this week. Not a lot of great games, so I thought, why not cover an ice hockey game in Alberta? Um, should be pretty cool. Currently snowing, which is why you see snow on the ground. So we're getting pretty close to all of it. So I hope you're doing well, Red Baron. We're getting ready for that flight. So, so that basically covers everyone. So we're going to make our way down to here. I hope you had a great Christmas, Red Baron. I hope you got some really cool gifts for Christmas. I'm waiting to get my new gaming PC built. I think it's about getting ready soon. So hopefully I'll get that as well. We're gonna head to we're gonna head to my first waypoint, University of Alberta. We're gonna get to that waypoint soon. Of course, after that, obviously, we'll get into the Edmonton, downtown Edmonton, and then Commonwealth Stadium, home of the Elks. Here we go. We're going to make our way over to our next waypoint. This is downtown Edmonton. We're about to come up here soon. Is Edmonton. Oh, very excited to check that out, of course. Obviously. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the weekend, of course. Looking forward to a lot of this with you guys. I hope you all enjoy the stream. Have a good time with the rest of us. Is University of Alberta. It's snowing in this part of Canada. I want to see how much Edmonton snow. Of course, how much snowfall does it get? Edmonton typically sees around 49 inches of snow a year. The snowiest months are December, January, February, March, around 10 inches each month. So, yeah, Edmonton can get some bit of snow. Or Edmonton Park. So this is Edmonton. Actually, Edmonton, Alberta, provincial capital of Alberta, Edmonton. And there it is, guys. There is the arena down below us. So down here, and look at that, guys. There's Edmonton's arena, the Oilers Watcher Place. Looks very fancy, of course. Hey, Tarnish Mossman, happy holidays to you. I hope you had a great Christmas, Tarnish. We're in Edmonton, actually. We're here to check out the Oilers versus Flames. We're in Edmonton. There is the Watchers Place. The place that Connor McDavid built. Of course, Connor McDavid's only the second greatest Oiler of all time. Um, of course. You want to look at great Oilers players? Wayne Gretzky is far and away the number one Oiler ever. Um, Gretzky is the GOAT. He's the GOAT of ice hockey. The greatest of all time. And a title he's rightfully earned. This is the Elks Stadium, home of the Edmonton Elks. By the way, of course, they used to be called the Eskimos. However, that name hasn't been used um, in a long time now because, of course, that name is culturally incredibly insensitive to native peoples. So they changed their name to Elks. And yes, it is a term. So we're currently heading our way over to here as well. But I hope you had a great holiday, Tarnish. I appreciate you guys coming around for this stream, of course. We have our upcoming VOD for it if you guys want to check it out. But I hope you guys enjoy. This was quite an eventful trip here in Alberta. Very snowy, of course. Looking forward to that, of course. Of course, we'll be back Sunday. We'll be in Maine, of course. We have the Acadian National Park flight. Should be absolutely gorgeous. Acadia is an absolute gorgeous park. It's actually one of the only few national parks I've actually visited in real life. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Um, of course, I've been waiting for the Everton game tomorrow. I gotta have to watch the Toffees play tomorrow. Best of luck for Everton. They will be playing against Burnley at Turf Moor. I think Everton have a good shot at winning this week. Burnley this year has been one of the worst teams in the league. They're relegation favorites for one of the favorite candidates for relegation, or Clarets. I do have a bit of a soft spot for Burnley because the Spanish club I follow, Espanyol, well, they also are the same ownership group as Burnley. So I do have a bit of a soft spot for the Clarets. But again, Everton should absolutely. I know it was tough the last two games, but the last two was against Chelsea and Arsenal. Of course, they weren't going to win those games, considering their Champions League. Not really surprising, and I think Everton, I think, could definitely take business against the Clarets. They beat them the last two times they played. They beat them the last two times they played in league play. So I think Everton definitely have a good track record against the Clarets. So I have full faith in Everton getting the win for Sunday. Pretty big stuff, of course. So in terms of the NFL playoffs, of course, and playoff picture, unfortunately, the Colts did lose against a very tough loss for the Colts. Of course, I think Indianapolis is pretty much out of the playoffs. Point. Started the season 7-1, and they completely choked it. It didn't help that Daniel Jones got hurt, but man, a huge game on Saturday against Jacksonville. The division leaders, they already clinched the playoffs, so if the Colts need to win, they need to win both their games. So, but again, the next top two teams are the Texans and Steelers. And of course, the NFC is pretty much set for the playoffs. It just depends on the Panthers and Buccaneers who wins the NFC South. They said that the Buccaneers, if they win, are more likely because they got Miami, while the Panthers got the Seahawks. Who knows? Should be an interesting playoffs stuff for the NFL. And then if you talk about the NBA this year, well, unfortunately for the NBA, of course, um, my Pacers are doing absolutely terrible this year. Pacers have been rubbish this year. It didn't help that Miles Turner left and Tyrese Halliburton got his terrible injury. 6-24. Ugh, not a good time to be a Pacers fan. Very rough year for Indiana. And out west, it's Oklahoma State Thunder and Spurs who are the best team last. The Nuggets are pretty good. In the East, it's been the Pistons and Knicks running the conference. Going to be interesting for the NBA. So, hey, Sir Dev, good to see you. Happy holidays, and Merry Christmas to you. Thank you, Sir Dev. I had a very good Christmas. I hope you had a great Christmas too, Sir Dev. We got a lot of stuff going on, of course. Good to see you two. Yeah, I'm very excited for what next year is going to bring. My new gaming PC coming soon. I'm able to run the sim bit better too. Things of frame rates get it, and it'll also let me play more other games because now I have a better PC. Yeah, I'm very excited for what next year is going to bring. Now the Gameday flights is going to be a continuous series similar to my group flights. I'll be bringing the series continuously, so we'll be doing that continuously. And I think for the rest of 26 is going to be the National Park series. It's going to be the rest of the um. It's going to be the rest of that series. It's going to be the national parks. Probably finish the rest of 26 with our national park series. And possibly the 2027 is going to be I'm thinking about for 2027 to bring back the Brittany DC3 flight, because it's going to be the 10th anniversary of that flight, and I think that would be a good time to bring it back. Is that Brittany DC3 flight? I think that would be a lot of fun, bringing the series back for 2024. I've already got the flight plan in the notes, so I don't really have to do anything brand new, obviously. But I think it would be really cool for the new sim to. Gonna have to land here. It's a grass field covered in snow, so should be an interesting challenge, of course. Should be a really interesting thing for 2027. But no worries, Sir Dev. Yeah, I had a great holiday. Can't wait for next year. See what that brings to the table. But no, I greatly enjoyed our Gameday series. I'll let you guys know by New Year's Eve. I'm very happy for this year. I know we didn't get as much channel support, but yeah, we had a really good series. The 50 State stream was a great series. I really enjoyed that one. Explored the United States. And I really like the Gameday flights. I think this is a great thing for Friday. I want to do group flights, but I like to talk about something I'm interested about sports. I know probably not all of you are interested. But then again, I mean, some people don't like Murph with Napoleon Bonaparte. So for our next Gameday flight, by the way, our next Gameday experience, of course, is going to be in Barcelona. So for the Barcelona Derby coming up, so we got a pretty big matchup in Spain. Now, it probably went a little wide. Oops. There you go, guys. We landed here in the cold snow. Rose Field. And the bush strip. Thank you so much, Tarnish. I hope we get to see you again soon. Maybe we'll see you on Murph's stream, if not Allison's stream tomorrow. I'll see you by then. So we're gonna go ahead and park and turn everything off, guys. Head and turn off the plane. So, guys, this is it, everyone. We made it to Rose Field in Alberta, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed our Winter Wonderland stream. We will be officially back on Sunday in Maine. We'll check out Acadia National Park, an absolutely gorgeous part of the Northeast United States. So we're gonna go and say hello to a different streamer. I don't think MSS official's on, so I think we're going to raid Ian Fisher. I think I'm gonna raid Ian's channel. So I hope we see you all guys soon. Take care, everyone, and see you all soon. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.